Okay, so wanted to start with this idea of giving you a little bit of credibility. As Scott mentioned, I graduated from Arizona State University 175 years ago. But the most relevant thing for you to think about is, or for you to know, is I was at Google for 15 years. I launched Google Apps for Education that we now call Google Workspaces at Arizona State University. They were the first university to use Google Apps back in 2006. I launched Google Apps into K-12 back in 2009. And the craziest idea I had at Google was launching Chromebooks into the education space back in 2011. I left last June. I had about 125 million users using Google tools in schools around the world. I had about 55 million Chromebooks in education, and that was before the pandemic, or just when before the school started with the pandemic. So, I got a lot of experience in the education space. I have a lot of experience working in the technology space. And what I want to talk about is technology, about digitalization and where human skills fits into all of that. And I want to start with this idea that education to me is the most important thing that you can focus on, period. It doesn't matter, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but it doesn't matter whether you are in high school, in college, whether you're a professional, whether you're a professor, whether you work in administration. Education is the key word that you will hear across the board. And it's critical for me too, because I'm a first-gen American, born, raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York, old school Hell's Kitchen, New York. By the way, don't forget to watch the Yankee-Boston Red Sox game in about 2 hours. Well, after the conference, of course. And I grew up in Hell's Kitchen, in poverty, a lot of violence, food stamps and welfare. And the reason I get to talk to you guys, and the reason I got to go to ASU and graduate with my master's from there, is because of education, right? Education got me to where I am today, and education is going to get me from where I am today to the next stage and then the next stage. And that's true forever. Education is what you focus on, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what I want to start with is this idea of where we are today. And the professor mentioned this a little bit, but about change. I want to look at it from a different perspective. And I want to look at digitalization. And by digitalization, I mean everything that has to do with technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, AR, VR, all those things that make up, automation, robotics, all those things that we think about when we think about digitalization or technology and the rapid change that it brings. And I want you to understand this, because most of you were born with technology, right? Just like I was born when there were color televisions. I didn't know what the world looked like before that. You guys were born with technology, with the web. You're the web generation. So you don't know any better but this world that you live in. But what I want you to understand is that you are literally cavemen and women when it comes to digitalization. It's like you're sitting around a big rock and you're striking a rock with a stick and you're going, fire! Like you're literally doing that, because where digitalization is going and what technology is going to look like in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years is going to make what we're doing now with technology look like cave dwelling days. It's just the way it's going to look. And here's an example. Right before I left Google back in June, we had a breakthrough in quantum computing. And I'm not going to get into quantum computing and what it's going to do or what it means, but you should definitely look it up. But I'll talk about it this way. The breakthrough that Google had in quantum computing can be described this way, which is if you took one of those mathematical equations, right? 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, those equations that just spins forever to get to a zero, and you fed that equation to the world's most powerful supercomputer, it would take the supercomputer 10,000 years processing that equation, 10,000 years of processing power to get to that equation, to get to zero. The breakthrough that Google had was they did it in 200 seconds. 10,000 years, 200 seconds. We're somewhere closer to 10,000 years. We are in 10,000 years. What's the world going to look like when we're in 200 seconds? Another way of thinking about it is that the quantum computer that Google had in 2019, and 2019 and technology age is like 35 years ago. The quantum computer that Google had in 2019, and this is a hard number to grasp, so pay attention to this number. That quantum computer from 2019 was 168 million times faster than the world's fastest supercomputer. 168 million times faster. So we are at the very, very beginning of this. Technology is coming at us at speeds that we couldn't even imagine. And it's going to be doing things that we don't even think about today. And we're not just driving, cars or, warehouses and machinery. We're talking about robots cleaning your house. We're talking about robots writing text. We're talking about robots editing video. We're talking about robots and computing doing a lot of the work that we think about today that we do. And so why I bring this up is because it's important to not necessarily focus on the technology or digitalization. We just got to accept that it's coming. And what we need to do, and what you need to do, is double down on what I call human skills. And by human skills, I mean problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, the ability to learn, and creativity. There's different people give you different definitions of that. That's my list. That's the list that I came up with that I've been working with, right? That's the list that I want to focus on. Those are human skills. We used to call them 21st century skills. And I don't use that phrase because, we're 21 years into the 21st century, right? So the idea that 21st century skills mean something that's going to happen in the future doesn't make sense. It's literally happening right now. So they're not 21st century skills. They are today's skills. My 7-year-old needs those skills. In fact, when my 7-year-old goes to first grade every day, I could care less what subject she learns. As a matter of fact, it'd be great if she could drive the subjects that she learns. Like I hope that she can learn subjects that she's interested in learning more about, because I don't care what the subjects are. What I care about is that she's building those skills inside those subjects. So if she's learning history, the last thing in the world that I want is for her to memorize a bunch of facts in history so that she can take a test to see what she remembered from a history textbook. That's not what I want. What I want her to do is learn history, but I want her to learn how to problem solve, critically think, collaborate, be creative inside the subject of history. That's what my focus is on for her. And that's what our focus should be on everyone. We need to double down on those human skills because that's the differentiator between what we do and what machines do. This is not the Matrix. This is not Terminator. This isn't machines versus humans, the battle to the end. This is machines and humans working together, using humans to build things and to come up with problems and solutions, and then use machines to address those problems and solutions. That's what we're talking about here. And out of that list, the one that is the most important one to focus on is the ability to learn. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying the ability to take a test, the ability to outline a textbook, the ability to take notes. I'm not talking about the ability to get a good grade. I'm not talking about any of those things. I'm talking about a mindset, a shift, a way you think about the world to focus on learning, that you understand that you can learn anything. So when people come up to me and they say, I'm not very good with technology, or they say, you're very creative, I'm not very creative. My response back to these folks, and this is why I don't have a lot of friends, my response back is, no, you've chosen not to be good with technology. You've chosen not to be creative, because everything that you need to learn to be good at those things is out there. It's just a choice, and it's okay that you choose that, but don't say you're not good with technology. Say, I've chosen not to be good with technology, because what you need to learn to be good in those things is out there. That's the power that digitalization and technology brings you. So for example, I would never say I'm a bad cook. I wouldn't say that. I would say that I've chosen not to be a good cook. And there's a world of difference between those two things, because if I choose to be a good cook, I think if I worked on it and I learned and I experimented and I practiced and I mastered and I did these things, that I could be a decent cook. Could I be a Michelin 5-star chef? Probably not, but I could be a good cook. I've just chosen not to be. And that's an important thing to think about, because what you choose to focus on is where you learn. And so understanding that is important. So like when I started my YouTube channel, I knew zero about videography, right? I've always been a photographer. If you go to my Instagram account, you'll see my photography, some of it from here in Sedona, where I am right now. I didn't know anything about videography. So I went to my oldest daughter, who also graduated from ASU, and asked her, you know, she's got a degree in videography and video production. And I asked her, hey, look, I want to start my YouTube channel. Where do I start? You know, what do I start with? And, you know, she laughed for 10 minutes. And then she said, okay, start here. And she said, shoot at 24 frames per second, double your shutter, keep your ISO at 100. If you go outside, that's going to blow out your exposure. So get a variable ND filter so you can manage the light that hits the lens. And I said, oh, and then she said, get a good mic. Mic sound is the most important element to all of it. And I said, cool, thank you. Okay, here's my next question. What the hell do any of those words mean? And then I went to go learn. And then I learned and I experimented and I learned and I experimented and I learned and I experimented and I failed and I did it. And if you go watch my YouTube videos, the first couple of videos look like hostage videos and the last couple of videos look good. And they're going to look better because I constantly learn. So this mindset, this shift of I don't know how to do something turns to I need to learn how to do X because I'm choosing to learn how to do X is the ability to learn. And that is the most important thing, because once you figure that part out, then you can focus on the next thing, which is the problem that you want to focus on. Oftentimes, adults, your parents, your relatives, teachers, professors, guidance counselors, career coaches, they'll all ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Every kid I've ever talked to has been asked that question. What do you want to be when you grow up? That question doesn't make sense anymore. As you just heard, the future of work is rapidly changing. Jobs, that question used to make sense like 100 years ago when I was a kid, when jobs were stable, when, you know, we had like 100 jobs. Clearly that doesn't exist anymore. Clearly jobs are shifting and changing. I left Google in June. I can't even tell you what I'm doing. I don't have a job. I don't work anywhere, but I'm working, right? The future of work is different. And so the better question isn't the question of what you want to be when you grow up doesn't make sense anymore. The question I want you to think about is, what problem do you want to solve? What's the problem that spins in your mind? What's the problem that gets you going, that you're passionate about? If you don't have a problem, that's cool. Start there. What's the problem that you want to focus on? Because then the next question becomes just as important, because it's individualized to you, which is what's the problem that you want to solve and how do you want to solve it? That's an important question, because if you said, I want to solve climate change, somebody might say to you, oh, climate change, let me think about that. Oh, you need to go get a degree in global sustainable development. You know, you need to go get a degree in environmental science. Sure, there's, you know, millions of ways to solve the problem of climate change that way, but does that mean that that's the right way for you to solve it? What if you are a gifted storyteller? What if you're a gifted photographer? What if you're a gifted educator? The way you can solve climate change is by going out and telling stories about climate change and the impact that it has on humans. The way you can solve climate change is by going out and documenting climate change. A picture is worth 1,000 words. A picture, a video, a clip has more of an impact than any science report that you can ever put together. You're a gifted educator. The way you can solve climate change is by going out and creating educational programs around climate change, or experiential programs for young students about climate change, so it becomes part of their culture and who they are. So the point is that how you want to solve that problem matters, and don't let anyone tell you that it doesn't. How you want to take your gifts, your passions, your skills, your talents to solve that problem. You might still need to get a degree in environmental studies, but only because you need to master environment and, let's say, photography if you're a photographer, right? You can't photograph things that you don't know about, so you have to know about those things. And then the last question, and this is where education comes in, and again, I don't mean education in just school, I mean education for the rest of your life. What do you need to know to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that you need to have to solve that problem that you're passionate about? Because that's where you start learning your knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's when you start building the skills that you need. That's when you start experiencing and experimenting. This idea of career is something that we need to get rid of. A career, I actually just looked it up before I got on here. A career, here's the definition of a career: an occupation undertaken for a significant period of a person's life with opportunities to progress. I don't even know what that means. There's no such thing as career anymore. There might be, there's professorships, there's doctors, there's lawyers, there are professions, and you have careers in those professions. But for the majority of us on that bell curve, in that 80% category there, career, the word career doesn't exist. It's problems. It's all about problem solving. It's all about finding problems you're passionate about and then going and solve problems. For example, the problem that I want to solve is focused on education. In my career, my 15 years at Google, my 7 years at Accenture, I don't get to meet a lot of people like me. I don't get to meet a lot of first generation, people who are people of color, who grew up in poverty with a single mother, who grew up on welfare in positions of influence and power. I don't get to meet a lot of them. And so I can either make up the excuse that the reason I don't is because I have a 900 IQ and I'm the only person who can do it. Or the other prediction, or the other kind of hypothesis, is that there are millions of students just like me who have the same capacity and the same capability and the same talent, but we're not giving them opportunities. And that's the problem that I'm trying to fix. And there are, again, a million ways to solve that problem. I can tackle that problem in higher education. I can tackle that problem in K-12. I can tackle that problem in parental education. I can tackle that problem in a whole bunch of different ways. But that problem for me stays the same, which is improving education and improving lives through education, especially lives of students who are growing up the way I grew up, right? So it's important to think about what is the problem that you want to solve, and then how do you want to solve it? Now, the last thing that I want to cover, and again, we don't have a lot of time, we don't have time for questions or answers, and we don't have a lot we don't have the bandwidth to do that. So make sure you hit me up with comments, questions, concerns, ideas, and things that you have, right? The last thing I want you to think about, and I'm sorry to drop this on you, but you've been lied to. You've been called the digital generation. You've been told that you were born with technology and you just naturally know how to use technology. You've been told, like, when you're 8 years old, hey, Johnny, fix this laptop for me, or fix this, or I can't get on the internet. And you thought you were smart because you can connect a Wi-Fi router or something. Here's the problem. You know nothing about digitalization, and you know nothing about the internet. You've been lied to. You've been told that you know how to use these tools. And the truth is you don't. I look at study after study after study that shows me, for example, there's a Stanford study where high school kids, 80% of high school kids can't tell you the difference between a fake news site and a real news site. 90% of elementary school kids can't tell you if they're looking at a sponsored website or a real news site. You don't know what's real. You don't know where to look for information. You don't know how to vet information. I've seen students rant and rave and complain if they can't find something on the first page of a Google result. That's not searching. If you're typing a question mark into a search bar, you're not a good searcher. You have to develop these skills. You have to people stop lying to you and telling you that you're good at this and that you have these skills, because you don't. So I would take a step back and really understand how to use these tools, really understand how to vet information, make sense of information, find information, use information, tell stories with information, do data analysis, be able to be a little bit of a data scientist and look at data and be able to create stories and pictures through that data. All of that is going to be important no matter what you do, no matter whether you become a YouTube star or whether you become a doctor, understanding how those tools all work and how they work together is absolutely critical to everything that you do. And so ask yourself some very simple test questions. How does Bluetooth work? How does the internet work? What's Wi-Fi? What's the difference between Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6? If you are out building ideas and products and companies and you don't know these things, any solution that you come up with will have a digitalization element to it, right? So go out and build your digital skills. There's tons of material out there. I still do it. I subscribe to 3 different newsletters that test my digital skills on a weekly basis because it's such an important part of my life. Making sure I know where to go find information. Making sure I know whether information I'm reading is real or not. Making sure the information I'm reading is validated in some way, right? So understanding that absolutely essential to the future of digitalization. And then the last thing I'll share with you guys is this, which is you have been told, you know, what job do you want to get? Where do you want to be when you grow up? You've been told, ask those questions. But the reality is that you have an opportunity that no generation before you has had. You can start anything that you want. So students come up to me all the time and say, you know, hey, how do I get a job at Google? And my response is, forget Google, go start a company that Google buys. Because you have everything that you need in front of you to do that. When I was a kid, if I wanted to start a business, I'd have to go get a storefront. I'd have to rent a storefront. I had to get equipment. I had to get shelves. I had to get an inventory. I had to get supplies. I had to hire people. It was hard to start a business. Today, a 7-year-old with some quick, witty sayings can start a t-shirt company in 10 minutes. And so that means that the opportunity that you have to take something you're passionate about, to take something that you care about and create a business around it has never been available before. That's the opportunity that you have in front of you. And for this generation, that is absolutely critical. And I'm not talking about becoming a YouTube star. I'm talking about solving problems and coming up with solutions to problems, but creating it on your own to the point where you start partnering with organizations and you start getting bought out by organizations who are also trying to solve that problem. That's the opportunity that you have in front of you. And with that, I will pause. I will ask you to think about the problem that you want to solve. How do you want to solve it? And then ask yourself what you need to learn to solve that problem. And once you have that framework, then you just got to go out and choose to do it.